Session blood.
Okay, so today we're going to be playing Runeblade versus Ninja. So Runeblade's a pretty cool deck that I think's gotten a little bit stronger with Crucible of War. And I haven't played a whole lot of the Ninja matchup, and as always, this is a bit of a rough first draft list, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I'm just going to show what I've sideboarded out first. So I've taken out the Remembrance because it doesn't block, and just don't want too many of those cards in the deck. Also, I feel like Runeblade can fatigue, but this is a type of matchup where that won't happen. Obviously, I've taken out the Null. Enchanting Melody isn't the best against Ninja because they've got too many Kodachis that can break it. And the Mage Master Boots are only there for the tomes. And I've taken out the tomes as well because I prefer to have the extra block 1 in this match and the tomes block for 2. Alright, so my opponent won the dice roll, and so they'll be starting. Okay. So our hand's not amazing here, so we may just try and filter out a few cards on turn 1. And this one I'll take because I kind of want to keep these. I don't want to give up an ascendancy too early. Okay, so we don't really have the best hand against Ninja for turn 1. Ideally, we would have liked to see a defense react or something along those lines. So what I'm just tossing up here is whether we want to go for the sort of Tome of the Arknight play into a weapon hit, or just go straight into Oath of the Arknight. I think what we're going to do here is play the Oath of the Arknight, attack for 6 with a Rune Chant, and Arsenal the Tome. Sometimes if you Arsenal an ascendancy too early, it gets stuck there, which can happen against a deck like Ninja as well, where you're forced to block up. So we're going to pitch and play the Yellow Oath to generate a Rune Chant. The good thing about Oath on a weapon attack is that you get sort of double the value away from the pump. So because it's non-attack action, I get +3, and I also get a further +2. One thing to keep in mind if you're playing against Runeblade, or even if you're playing Runeblade yourself, the Rune Chant's always triggered before blocks. That's why I've got it sort of ordered in this way with the red die. Okay, so we've got the Rune Chant generated. Now, I'm guessing we'll probably have to end up blocking this turn. Our opponent's got a full hand, they've got an energy potion, so let's just hope we can get through it okay. Okay, so one thing to notice, my opponent's played the Plunder Run first because they don't want to go Kodachi, Plunder Run. That would break the chain for Master Momentum. So we're going to take one here. Now if we take this damage, it's forcing us to block the third attack because we can't afford a Plunder plus Mass trigger, but we're just going to have to live with that. Okay, so if I'm playing a Snatch here, that indicates to me that they're representing a Razor Reflex. They've got 1 resource up. Razor Reflex would just be incredibly bad for us. So I think what we need to do here is block this for 7. Unfortunately, this is going to leave us with a bit of a dead hand next turn, but sometimes it is what it is. So let's just hope they don't have the they don't have the launching press. Okay, so that's pretty bad for us. So they're going to draw 3 cards in total here. I mean, honestly, that's probably a bit of a misplay on my side. It would have been better to just, because the Minor Strike's dead anyway, it would have just been better to block for 9, saving the equipment, and having the reduce the rune chant. One thing I was worried about, however, is that if we block for 9 there and they follow up with another attack. Well, at least on the bright side, we're going to be able to get rid of the Minor Strike, which is otherwise dead. No, unfortunately it's been given go again from Art of War, so it's not really worth blocking. So we're just going to have to take the 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're able to block with the Enlightened. So not ideal, but that's just what happens sometimes with Ninja. Now generally you do want to save your equipment when you're playing against Ninja, but here we might be able to get value out of the Arcanite Skullcap from blocking for 2. So we just need to see how we want to play this. And blocking with another Mordred Tide, it's not ideal. That would be our second one gone. We do have to block, it's just a decision of what to block with. Okay, I think ultimately here we will need to try and get back some of the tempo. And we're probably going to end up blocking with multiple cards anyway. So we're going to block with this. And we'll block with the Meet and Greet for now, to at least try and set up a Red Oath attack, if that comes through. Okay, so we're going to have to block this for 6 here. So, one of those games against Ninja, sometimes you just have to stick with it and wait for an off turn. This is quite difficult because our opponents force us into multiple equipment blocks already. Imagine this might be for 5 with go again, but we'll see. They could do it for 7 and represent something like a Razor Reflex or Snapdragon Scalers. I mean, if our opponent gives up the Scalers, we will probably make that trade. So they're going for 7. The issue is here because we are sort of on the wrong side of the momentum. We have to think if it's worth blocking for 6 and trading the Scalers to let them draw a card in card 2. In this situation, we kind of look at what we can do next turn. Oh, actually, they do have 1 resource up, so it could be Razor Reflex. So in this case, we're just going to block for 6 and see what happens. If they raise and we block for 7, it goes through anyway. If they use the Snapdragon Scalers... okay, unfortunately we're going to have to give up the Volition. Okay, so our opponents decided to use the Scalers. If we can come out of this turn without taking too much damage, that's actually kind of okay for us. Okay, so they've gone for a Coax of Commotion here. Now, in this version of Ninja with Stolbeach Strike, the Quicken token can be pretty good for them, and it's not particularly great for us. So our turn next turn, if we let this through, we're going to get a Quicken token. We'll be 11 life behind, and all we can do is go Tome of the Arknight. Pray it hits, and if it doesn't, hit for 4. So we'll block it out here. Okay, so our opponent had the Reflex. We'll see what they go with. Okay, so once again, we're just going to draw and pass. So we have gotten through 2 Razor Reflexes, at least 2 of those are gone. Potentially you could block with the Skullcap there, another card from hand. If our opponent has a big turn and we need to block for 9 and drop Aretha Runes, that's not the worst thing. So we'll see what this E-Strike's coming in for. I mean, if it's a 7, we just live with it if they have the third razor reflex. Okay, so they chosen go again 5, which is kind of what we were expecting. It's a soul beat strike for 2. Now the question is, do we think our opponent has a follow-up attack to this that we would rather block instead? At this stage, we'll just block him. Arsenal. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that much this game, but at least we can build up a few enchants here. Okay, so in this situation, again, if we can get value out of the skull cap, we might as well get value. Because we've got 2 sink belows, I'm comfortable blocking this, and then blocking up the sink. Sorry, the gust wave if they've got the follow-up. Usually I'd wait for attack reactions, but they're not going to play attack reaction on this, I think, but we'll check. Sometimes a ninja player, if they don't have a 0 cost, might use an ancestral empowerment early here. Usually not. It would have to be desperate. So we're going to sink below, get rid of that Mordred Tide. Doesn't really help us out too much. And nice, we've picked up a reduced to enchant. Okay, so the question is, do we want to reduce to enchant or sink below here to get rid of this card? I may actually sink below because I'd like to be able to pick up a blue. If I pick up a blue card, I can use the Tome of the Arknight and Arsenal the reduce to enchant instead. I can time anyway, but if we have a blue and we hit, it's much better. And we drew the same card. Okay, so here we're just going to use this time just to get it out of Arsenal. If we hit, it's a bonus. And there we go, we did it. So we got an attack and a non-attack. So that's actually pretty good for us. It's a little bit annoying that if we enlighten strike, we're not going to have the resources. We're not going to have a free reduce the rune chance. But we may just have to live with that here. So Tome is interesting in Runeblade. I like it because it helps down Viserai. I mean, arguably here, I could just enlighten strike it to the bottom, but who knows, we may have a play we'd rather do. Kind of like that. So the question here is, do we want to be greedy and go for the Rune Flash into Enlighten Strike for 7? So that's threatening 9, 16 damage this turn. One problem is because we're so far behind that our opponent could actually just take 16 and would only be 1 life ahead. And the Rune Flash will generate another Rune Chant. It's interesting, because if we Enlighten Strike for 7, we get through potentially up to 12 damage, putting our opponent to 22. If we can disrupt their turn, or if we can even save this to reduce the Rune Chant, that could get us back in the game. Another option is we could Rune Flash and Enlighten Strike, draw a card. We've used 2 of our Sync Blows already, so we're probably not getting another reaction anyway. Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one here. I think ultimately we may just go for the Enlightened Strike play. So what we're trying to do here is if we get through 12 damage, we hope that we might be able to do something. If we can get our opponent to get rid of some cards like they are here, then hopefully we have a chance to take back some tempo. Again, it's always a bit of a struggle when you're this far behind against Ninja, but never give up. That's interesting. So they've gone for Cokes rather than going for Kodachis first. I mean, if we block for 3 and then we're forced to pitch Reduce to Rune Chant, that doesn't leave us with much of a hand. So what are our options? I mean, it's risky taking the full 4, especially if they have the Razor. I mean, what we're trying to avoid is blocking with, say, Oath, pitching to make a Rune Chant, then our next turn is to pitch Life for a Life. So yeah, this is a little bit difficult. So the problem is if we block with the grass, it gives up another equipment. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of good options here. What we may actually just do is block for 6. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, it may be nice just to block with the red one, allowing us to go Oath the Arknight and attack with our weapon. That would potentially generate a Rune Chant. Or even Life for a Life, just make a Rune Chant. So now we're left in a slightly tough spot. I actually don't think Life for a Life is worth it here. So the reason we made the Rune Chant is because I felt we were going to need the Reduce to Rune Chant that we're holding. Which I think ultimately was correct here. Now, we don't really want to be blown out by an Ancestral Empowerment here. So our opponent hasn't played any yet. They've gone through nearly half their deck. Okay, so we may have to overblock this. So our opponent Empowerment said stay on 2 cards, they draw another card, and they follow up with Gust Wave, which is really bad. We don't want to overblock this because we need to be able to block a follow-up attack. So we're going to split the difference and block this for 8. So now we have to decide if we think they've got the empowerment or if we think they've got another attack. I think we just need to block this for 4. So again, we had to give up an equipment block there, but making that rune chart kind of came through for us. So our opponent may have a yellow razor here. The Snapdragon scalers are down. Nothing else is going to be giving it a go again. So let's think, if they're yellow razor, they get to draw a card, they can pitch the Katsu and follow it with Magenshis. I mean, that's probably a risk we're just going to have to take. Because that allows us to actually, if we block the 3 here with Rattlebones, next turn we can pitch Become the Arknight to Rattlebones, get back a Rune Flash, play a Rune Flash for 4, play a Spellblade Strike for 4. Okay, so we've been on the back foot pretty much the entire game, so we're going to have to make this turn count. So it's worth looking through just to see if we do have any better options for this Rattlebones. Meet and Greet's not really going to cut it, because if they pitch to prevent the 2 rune chance and just take the 4, it's not great for us. So we've got things like Spellblade Assault that's not going to do it. Yeah. Oh, we actually don't have the Rune Flash because I put it on the bottom. Well, that's a shame. Okay, so pays to keep in mind what's in your graveyard. For some reason I forgot and thought I had played that Rune Flash when clearly I had not. I mean, we may even have to look at something like the Bloodsheath Skeleton here. Yeah, because the problem is, even if we get back something like Meet and Greet and play it, the Go Again doesn't do much for us. I mean, we might just have to... Let's think, what can we do, what can we do? And we can use this to get a Rune Flash that doesn't do anything. We could get back Consuming Volition. Maybe that's the play. Force them to at least pitch something to try to get some damage through. Arsenal the Spellblade Strike. We could just play the Spellblade Strike. Okay. So, not a whole lot of good options. I think we're just going to have to get back the Volition. So at least this forces our opponent to interact with us. Like, unless they've got something like a sink below, or even if they've got a sink below, it's still taking at least one card out of their hand. So they've probably got a flick flack or a sink below if they're taking the rune chance. Okay, so we kind of got paid off there. Our opponent probably has something pretty good. But at least that's why I want to go for the Consuming Volition, to force something at least there. We got through 6 damage, we stripped a card. If we can disrupt our opponent this turn, then we're still probably pretty far behind, to be honest, but it might be something. Okay, now I'm seriously considering blocking with the Grasp of the Arknight here. The reason I'm a bit hesitant is because I'd like to be able to block for 4 with this, but I feel ultimately this may come through. If need be, we can block with the Read the Runes, reduce the Enchant, and I'm thinking I may end up using the Bloodsheath Skeleton next turn for an Oath of the Arknight Spellblade Strike, just to try get us back into this game. Other option is to block for 2 here, but no. Okay, so it looks like they had the Command and Conquer Lunging Press. It didn't hurt us too much there. I mean, it kind of shut down our Bloodsheath play, but the Spellblade Strike wasn't doing that much anyway there. So we're just going to play Read the Runes and pass. Again, what we're waiting for here is basically a turn where we can stop the opponent and get something done on our end. Okay, now this might be a turn where we need to use the Bloodsheath just for the 9th blade. So we'll block for 6 and see what they have. So they've got the Ancestral, so we're probably going to have to stop this here. Worst case scenario, they've got the Gustwave in hand, and we have to give it the Bloodsheath. Okay, yep. So they're out of resources here, so we're not going to get hit by McGinchys, and an Ancestral Lunging Press isn't going to get through the Reduce to Rune Chant. Now, our decision next turn is if we want to go all in with the Bloodsheath to get off the 9th blade, or if we want to play a little bit more defensive. So at this point in the game, it's usually worth just having a quick look through the opponent's graveyard and Spanish Zone, just to see what they may have left. So we've gone through the red Surging Strikes and 2 yellow Surging Strikes. and we've gone through 3 red soul beads. So we haven't seen anything like leg tap this game. We've gone through 2 of the gust waves, so potentially our opponent only has 1 Surging Strike left. So 3 red soul beads gone, 5 out of 6 Surging Strikes gone, 3 Enlightened Strikes. So in this situation, it probably is worth saving the Skeletor. So that's our opponent's final Art of War as well, I believe. Again, we did take out that Remembrance, and it looks like I may eventually be proven wrong that this game isn't going to go to fatigue. Because we do need to bear in mind how many cards we've got left versus how many they've got left. Okay. So we may be facing down something like a Fine Center. Now we actually can't block this with Rune Flashes because of the ability there. So all our attack actions lock for 4, so unfortunately we do have to reduce the enchant this. And this is the power of Heron's Flight coming through here. Just clarifying with the opponent what mode they're choosing on this. Okay, well that's actually kind of good for us. So if we use the Skeletor and attack for 9, our opponent's probably going to be able to pitch away most of the rune chance. They could double block and take 3. Does that leave us with enough cards to win the game? I'm not certain it does. And Rune Flash is not a bad card to have in Arsenal. It's obviously not ideal if we use up all our rune chance here. Unfortunately, our other option is just passing, and even then, we're not going to have a great opportunity. So, unfortunately, we're just going to have to do it. So we are representing 16 damage here. I think our opponent's unlikely to let all of it through. Primarily because they've gone through so many of their attacks this game. So by that I mean if they take 16 damage and go to 7, there's a chance we can simply just take their next turn worth of damage. Also, we're hoping they don't have blues in hand, basically, yeah. The more cards we can get that have to block the Ninth Blade here, the better, given that we're both running quite low. So opponent quite likely has at least one blue. We're just kind of hoping they don't have to. I mean, I'm trying to conserve my life total a little bit here to give ourselves a window to get through. So it's only 2 life, but the Kodachis are really going to start to bite at this point. Okay, so we got all our rune chants through. That's pretty good news. So we've managed to even up the life and get a rune flash into Arsenal. Okay, so our opponent's got the Command and Conquer here. I mean, if they do have another lunging press, that's unfortunate. And also bear in mind, that's the final Surging Strike. So that's going to the bottom of their deck. That should be coming up for another 4 to 5 turns. So that's something we should keep in mind as well. Now, my issue with the Ascendancy here is I'm not confident we've got enough rune chant generation to be able to get off an Ascendancy for enough, and I really want to play the Enlightened Strike next turn. And the Skies blocks it too, that's why that wasn't an option to block there. Okay, so that's really good for us here. So if we look now, we've got through, we haven't seen a yellow gust wave, so I think we've got through all the sort of damaging gust waves. McGinchys, we got through the McGinchys. So the Surging Strike at the bottom probably isn't going to hurt us that badly. Okay, so there is a question over whether it's worth blocking this. I don't think so. Crane answer 1, not really threatening here. So this is kind of what I was talking about playing for our window. Hopefully this is it. We really need to get some damage through this turn. So our opponent probably just wanted to get rid of that out of Arsenal. So their threat density seems to be running a little bit lower by now. Now, one thing we want to consider here is where we want to go with this turn. It's very important when you're playing Runeblade to sequence your turns correctly. So for example, if I pitch the Shard and play a life for a life here, I believe it would crack the rune chant. Actually, I might just check that ruling because I want to make sure I get that right for people watching this video. You actually play the card and then pay the pitch cost. I know generally I've been shortcutting this game. I'm a little bit used to Magic and do it the other way around. So if I do pitch the shard to play an attack here, it won't crack the rune chant. So that's actually pretty cool for us. Okay, so now back to the game. Okay, so now we just need to make sure we get the absolute maximum damage, because this, we're running low on cards. This is our window to sort of punch through damage. So this spot may have been correct to start with the Scar, in case they have something like a Sink Below Flick Flack. Okay, fortunately for us, they did not, so we're going to get the life gain there. So this lets us follow up with a Rune Flash. Okay, so it looks like our opponent doesn't want to block here, if they've taken that damage. So rather than save the Scar, we're just going to play the Scar, and this is where I should have been paying a little bit more attention to the pitch order, because that might help me out with time. That's a tip for everyone watching this game. When you're learning, when you're learning, it's probably a good idea to try and pick up that habit from the beginning, because it really sort of matters. Okay, so our opponent's gone down to 2. So this must be the turn they're looking to try and get us. Okay, so that makes sense, they've got the Ponder on. Okay, now that is a good time for us to draw that. It's not ideal, but it's good to have that reduced to enchant back up. Okay, so in this situation we're probably going to block. I mean, we don't really want to be getting rid of our threats at this point, but we need to be sort of keeping up with our opponent. So we're probably going to block with because I believe that's for 5, with the Dread Triptych. Actually, no, we're going to block with the Spellblade Assault and the Spellblade Assault. We're going to save this because it's a relevant blue card for later. Okay, so going for the Ancestral. And that's a little bit frustrating that they've drawn the Razor Reflex there, because we probably... I mean, we don't necessarily have to block this. We probably want to check their Crane Dance. So we're taking 2 damage, they get to draw a card. So basically we just want to see if they're going to be able to punish us with a follow-up. I think because our opponent's so low on threats, we do just want to be safe, and we've got a big life lead. They've obviously taken a lot of damage to set up this turn. So I think we may just block this one up with a reduced to enchant. So this is our last reduce, but I think they're pretty much down to Kadachi range. I believe they have the Surging Strike coming up next turn. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant to block this. I don't really want to take 2 damage. It's a tough call, because it may even be worth just taking a crane. Taking 2 puts us to 7, a crane dance puts us to 4. We'll see if we end up regretting this. Okay, one thing is here we want to see if we can actually get off the Ascendancy. I don't think we can. So we could go Mordred Tide, Pitch, to Tome. See, this is where it was pretty rough having to use our Blotchy Skeletor, because that would be a card that could help us close out the game here. So if we did have the Bloodsheath, we'd be able to just take this and go Pitch. We go Mordred Tide, Pitch, Time of the Arknight to get Rune Chance, and then we go Come to Fight Ascendancy. I mean, as it stands, we just had to figure out which card is more valuable to us here. So we know our Dread Triptych's on the bottom, we know our Shard's underneath that. I have a feeling we need to save these, even if we end up hardcasting this with 2 blues with Come to Fight. So if we look through our opponent's reactions, we haven't seen any Flick Flacks. They may have 1 Sink Below left.
Alright, we did it, team, we did it. Now, what do we want to do here? I mean, what I'm thinking we do is we play the Rune Flash for the 2 resources, then we can pitch 2 and attack 4 with the weapon. So then that actually sets up our Ascendancy play with the Come to Fight. And also this is going to force out blocks from our opponent's hand, and we're pretty sure they've got the Surging Strike at this point. The good thing is as well they've got the Tunic to get rid of the first Rune Chant, but Rune Flash is going to create a second one. So yeah, because if I use a resource to play Come to Fight, I then have to pitch this to play Rune Flash for 7. So one, I think it's better to do it this way. Yep, so the Tunic hits the Rune Chant. Let me see the block for 4. And there is a question about whether we save the counterfight or the ascendancy actually here. I think what we want to do is pitch the ascendancy and arsenal the counterfight. Because we want to be using these in conjunction anyway. I mean, the thing is, our opponent doesn't know we have the ascendancy in arsenal, they do know we have the counterfight. Yeah, it's a bit of a 50-50. We'll pitch the ascendancy. Okay, so we've got the mask, which kind of makes sense they block with that here. We've got our opponent down to 1, they don't have tunic. This does mean that we can strip 2 cards by creating a rune chant. So we want to put the counterfight on the bottom, the ascendancy on top. So I think we're going to see the Surging Strike here. Well, maybe not. So yeah, we should have saved the ascendancy. That hopefully will not lose us the game. That would have allowed us to play Oath of the Arknight and pitch to an ascendancy for the win. So we know next hand is going to be Dread Triptych, Blue Mulgrean Skies, Counterfight, and Ascendancy. So what that means here is we probably just want to block this out. I mean, I don't think we want to get too tricky and end up using this to try fetch up the Ascendancy. I think we would just want to try strip 3 cards from our opponent's hand next turn. So I think we want to be able to try create a rune chant, attack for 6, and then set up the win next turn. Because I'm just thinking it through. If we let this head and get hit by like a Coax of Commotion or something like that, it's not ideal. But we don't want to block with this and let them get the a lunging press off or something like that. So one thing as well, you always want to maximize your resources and things you can do playing this. So, I mean, our opponent almost certainly has a blue at this point to get rid of the rune chants. So, a 3 or 1 rune chants doesn't make a huge difference, but, you know, might as well make them get rid of the blue card. So we're going to pitch the Grasp, which creates 2 rune chants. We have 1 resource floating. We're going to pitch and play Oath of the Arknight. Oh, actually.
So they're out of red razors, so we don't mind just taking this here. So now this should win us the game. Never give up, people. Never give up. We were losing that entire game. What our opponent had mastered in the end? A crane dance. So we have a quick look at... So they actually took out the unmovable, so they took out that third sync below, which I probably should have noticed if I was paying attention. Probably a few misplays were made towards the end of that game. I played a little bit on this deck, but that's something, just to keep in mind, trying to keep track of what cards your opponent has. So it looks like they took out a lot of the defense reactions in this game. I'm not sure if that's correct. Again, I only really played one ascendancy that whole game. Most of my other attacks were actually reasonably small, so ultimately that may have been the correct call. But yeah, thank you for watching, everyone. We will upload this with a deck list so you can have a look at it. Feel free to give it a go. As always, feel free to mention anything you think I could have done better in the comments. We all make mistakes. What's important is to learn from them. I'll probably be going back this game and seeing what I could have done differently as well, as I imagine my opponent might. But yeah, thank you.